You're listening to a Brain Stew Fresh Fright review.
What's up, creeps? Welcome to another Epic Film Guys Fresh Fright review. I'm your host, Justin, and of course I'm joined by none other than
B-Ratty.
B-Ratty in the house here. We're a review of Osgood Perkins' newest movie, a folk horror film, if you will, Keeper, which just landed in theaters. Very quietly, if I do say so myself.
Barely know her. Seems like it in this movie.
I don't want to use the obvious quote reference when it comes to the name, because I saw every other fucking outlet use it, known to man. Mm-hmm. But yes, so this is the second Osgood Perkins movie we've gotten so far this year, and I feel like The Monkey was so long ago that it doesn't feel like it was this year, but it was. We already reviewed that earlier this year. We both kind of came out pretty satisfied with that. Am I right on that?
But also, doesn't it kind of feel like it's been shorter since Longlegs came out than The Monkey? Like, I feel like Longlegs was a more recent release, even though, that was a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
I feel like somehow The Monkey came out even longer than that. And then, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed The Monkey a lot. I know a lot of people kind of gave it shit because it didn't have the same vibe tonally as Longlegs, and he was pretty honest that it wouldn't. And I think that it's a really, you can listen to our episode on it because it's really fun, but it's basically a blueprint of how to adapt a Stephen King short story really well.
Sure.
You keep the core intact and then add your own nuances and vibes and tones to it, and I think it was good for what it was.
I think there's something to be said about how many movies in a year a filmmaker will release. Now, we know that Keeper was a movie made during a strike while he was making The Monkey. Mm-hmm. So he just decided to use all the same crew, most of the same crew and some of the same actors and such, and production team to make Keeper, so that way they would continue to get paid. And he grabbed Nick Leppard, a Canadian writer, to write the script. So this is not an Osgood Perkins written movie. The story's not by him. It's not a screenplay by him. And Leppard did, he wrote Dangerous Animals, which came out earlier this year, which had Jai Courtney in it, who I usually detest, but I actually really liked that movie. I believe I covered that one with my friend Phil from the Spook House podcast, so if you're interested in checking that one out. But I really enjoyed that movie for what it was, a solid little sea thriller. But I think there's something special about Osgood Perkins in the way he creates characters and, puts together a story and basically creates the madness that we're used to in his movies. Longlegs was a great example of that, probably the best example, which I think, to your point as well, Longlegs is still being talked about a lot more than The Monkey because it's that much more beloved, or it's that much more detested by a lot of people. So I see people tweeting about Longlegs still like every other day in film Twitter and such, but The Monkey kind of came and went. I think it didn't help that Final Destination Bloodlines came out a few months later, and they have similar vibes going on, that kind of, people do crazy shit and they die in insane ways type of thing. So Keeper, go ahead.
I will say, though, Faye and I just recently rewatched, after seeing Keeper, we went back and watched The Blackcoat's Daughter, because I think it's good for this time of year. And I was, I know we'll talk about it more in this episode, but I think that Blackcoat's Daughter I do enjoy. I think that it gets some flack because then eventually you see in Longlegs, like, everything is more fleshed out.
Sure.
It's almost like Blackcoat's Daughter was his pre-Longlegs experiment with that sort of imagery, tone, direction. But it is interesting, and I'd be interested to hear your perspective on it, of the films that we get from Perkins that he also writes, or like The Monkey where he adapts the screenplay, versus the movies that he has that he is just the director. So like this one and Gretel and Hansel.
Gretel and Hansel is still up there for me as one of my favorite films of his. It's so basic and to the point, but I mean the aura and the atmosphere and just the score to that thing. I was obsessed with that movie for a while. But with Keeper, I think before we go any further, I can actually ask you in a polite way to allow our listeners to be in on what Keeper is with a synopsis, because a lot of people haven't seen this or even fucking heard of it. So please do me a favor, B-Ratty.
I mean, it's pretty simple. A romantic anniversary trip to a secluded cabin turns sinister when a dark presence reveals itself, forcing a couple to confront the property's haunting past, with the tagline, "If only you were dead."
If only you were dead.
A dark trip from Osgood Perkins.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I will say, like, I'm just gonna jump into my initial thoughts, but like, oh my gosh, I guess there's an ad playing. That's cool. So my initial thoughts are that Osgood Perkins hadn't let me down yet. So I know that you start to wonder, like, all right, well, how many movies are you churning out before you hit a dud? But I was like, well, I loved Longlegs. I really, really loved it. The Monkey was really fun for me, and I like his previous work. I've kind of liked, the interviews that he's given. I like how blunt he can be, and that kind of all adds to this air about him as a director. And I think the premise is simple enough where it's like, you go to a secluded cabin, you're dating somebody, and all of a sudden these things start coming out. And of course, with this, you're going to get a more sinister thing. So I was pretty stoked on it. I don't know. I think you were too. I mean, I think the name Osgood Perkins is like, okay, cool. Like, this is something to look forward to.
Absolutely. And the key thing is, if those that saw The Monkey remember, at the end of The Monkey, you got a teaser for this movie. So, I mean, we already had an idea like, where he was going to be heading to something different. And I like the fact that Longlegs, The Monkey, and now Keeper, they're all very specifically unique into themselves, especially tonally. That's the one thing about this one that it took me for a spin, if you will, because it doesn't have that trademark Perkins humor until right at the end. I mean, and ladies and gentlemen, full spoiler as always, just wanted to put that out there before we go any further, because I do believe this movie's enjoyment will be based specifically on you not being spoiled at all whatsoever. Go in as dark as possible. So if you haven't seen it and you're at all interested, come listen to this after you've seen the movie. But he's got this very unique, dark, brutally dark sense of humor in his last two movies, and this one doesn't really have it. I didn't feel like it was there. But the trailer looked good. I felt like it is interesting that they're releasing another one of his movies, not even all the way at the end of the year. Like, it's not like it's December, it was early November.
Mm-hmm. Great band.
I remember them, actually. I think I had one of their albums. But unfortunately, unlike The Monkey and Longlegs was like a fucking cultural phenomenon. Really, it was for a small horror movie. I think it was the biggest opening Neon had ever at that point. This movie's made $3 million off of a $6 million budget, so it's not exactly lighting the world on fire or actually getting that many people talking. I think there wasn't much marketing for this, and sometimes we know that studios just don't want to put in the extra time and effort or money to do advanced screenings, press screenings, and things of that nature. But we are on the list for Neon, and we didn't get a screening here in DC. So when I didn't get an email for that, I was kind of worried. But they did the same thing for Longlegs. They didn't do a press screening here for it. So is it that one they were just super confident about and said, screw it, we don't need to do one? Like, versus this one where they were like, we don't want to put the money and time into it? Because when it debuted on Rotten Tomatoes, not that that's the end all be all by any means whatsoever, it did debut at like 40% rotten. Yeah. It has since then gone up to, I think, a lower fresh rating. But so this movie, for me, initial thoughts, I have to say right off the bat, the screenplay is just not very good. I think there's a lot of great ideas in the story, some really interesting character points, and I love the idea. I love what the core concept is. Like, who doesn't? It's such a, like you said, easy thing to do. Mm-hmm. Put a couple out in the woods in a cabin and have crazy shit happen to them. You'd think that'd be just the perfect thing for Perkins to do. And unfortunately, I just felt like without him having anything to do with the story or the screenplay, I mean, I'm sure he might have had some input here, but I just think the movie failed to really live up to its potential based on that screenplay. The movie has some brilliant, amazing atmosphere. It has some awesome imagery. It's got some really great scares as well. There was one that really nabbed me pretty hard. And of course, some really creepy shit. I mean, he has this trademark vibe and style to these things that it's unmistakably Osgood Perkins. And I loved all of those elements. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, I felt what we saw in the theater was a movie that just, it wasn't fully there yet. I think it could have used a little bit more work on the script, maybe more time in the oven, if you will. But that's where I landed right as soon as I left the theater.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that Perkins has done extremely well through all of his movies for me is the score and or soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
I think that he is really good at pairing music with scenes, imagery. I mean, not to keep bringing up Longlegs, but I think using T-Rex and Longlegs was just perfect. And it's the same thing here. Like this one had more of like that 70s, 80s vibe, kind of like not lo-fi, but kind of what you would imagine going into like a house party in the 70s would have been like. And I think that pairs well with that type of like early 90s architecture for that cabin where it's like giant fucking windows everywhere.
Which, by the way, I was talking to Faye about this after the screening because I'm a massive fan of those like late 80s, early 90s modern contemporary cabins with like fucking windows everywhere. I've always wanted to live in one. Growing up, I had a friend that he lived in one and I just loved it. There was, skylight windows everywhere. And no matter where you were in the house, you could see through the window somewhere. So it was a really, really cool, it gave like a 1990s vintage vibe where in The Monkey, we had that house in the beginning that had like a 1970s vibe or 80s vibe. Each movie he grabbed something else that's vintage. So I really liked that he kind of captured that early 90s vibe in the at least the house and the setting in this one.
Yeah. But, and just like you with the scares, there's some really well-timed scares, some imagery.
Yes.
But for me, like there's the film overall is missing cohesion, and for me the most enjoyable parts are simply that they're parts of the movie. It's not the whole movie was not something that I thought worked well for me. I think that I really did not like the way the dialogue was written between our two main characters,
which we have to talk about immediately.
Yeah. And I think that the second act goes on a little too long. And that would be fine, except that the third act is so rushed and they're kind of like just spoon feeding you this exposition that still doesn't make sense with what they're trying to do. And I can get over that, except in this one, like you really need to understand why these things are happening. If you're going to introduce this quote sinister force, like you have to be able to explain why it's so sinister, what it's doing, what these fucking things are, So yeah, initially at the theater, I think a little deflated because I was like, man, it would have been nice like for this one to really just like stick the landing. And I just don't know that it did.
I can guarantee you, at least in my viewpoint, it did not. But it had a lot of things that really stood out to me that I really enjoyed. But that's where I find myself more frustrated, Brady. When I watch a movie and it's complete shit, I know it's complete shit, so I look at it through that lens versus a really good movie. This is a movie that had so many things going for it that it was almost there. It was close to being there, at least to be semi-successful in my viewpoint. My favorite thing about this movie is Tatiana Maslany, who plays Liz. She's also in The Monkey. Mm-hmm. So Perkins grabbed her over from that. She's basically our lead, who I guess she's just a painter. That's all we really know about her. That's one of the most frustrating things for me is I don't need a full backstory. I don't need flashbacks. I don't need to see what the person ate for fucking dinner the week before, but I want to know a little bit more about this character. So I'm informed on certain things that make them tick or what frightens them, or, this person is with this dude, Malcolm, who's a doctor played by Roseif Sutherland, who is Donald Sutherland's son. Apparently he's French. He
played in Timeline.
Yeah, he has the weirdest fucking accent in this movie. I don't know what he's trying to do with it. Is he trying to do a Brooklyn accent? Is he just trying to have like an English accent with a little bit of French in there? Whatever the fuck it was distracting as hell, and I didn't really care for it. He, as a character written on the page, seems to be a wet blanket, so I can't completely blame him on his performance, which is also kind of a wet blanket. I didn't find him very compelling at all, but Maslany is brilliant in this movie. She's asked to go through complete living hell during this movie. She's dragged all over the place emotionally and literally just consistently terrified. And I find I take issue with the opening of the movie is these two going on this trip to his secluded cabin on the countryside. And they've been together apparently a year, Brady, and it doesn't feel like they've been together. It feels almost like a first date, like they just met the week before. I don't feel any deep chemistry between the two. It seems like to me, she's still unsure about this guy. Even when she has a phone call with her friend before leaving, it's like, you know, he bought me this beige, sweater to wear. And like, it's like they still don't know each other. And based on my experience of being in a relationship for more than a year, you usually know the person pretty fucking well by that point. I know he's a doctor. He's a doctor and it takes up a lot of his time. So maybe that's the reasoning behind it. But I really wanted to care more about them as a couple. And unfortunately, I found very little chemistry, very little romance, even though they try here and there, like with an attempted sex scene, which, gets foiled for some reason. That just, to me, they didn't gel well at all together.
Yeah, and I think, again, this is a full spoiler episode, but, I also really wanted just a tiny bit more backstory here. Like, it felt awkward that you're dropping us into this car where, they're unsure if they're holding their hands or not. And she, they're talking about music where she's like, oh, I didn't know you were into this kind of music.
Yeah,
and
she's like, you're a punk or you're not a punk or whatever the hell she said.
Yeah, and it's like, all right, cool. Like, usually I feel like those are the conversations you have when you first, like, before you even go on a date, like when you're just like, oh, like, what are you into? Like, is this even going to work? But then, like, everything is so awkward. And I don't know, like, Faye made some good points where I have to bring them up because it does make sense to me where it's like, well, what you end up finding out, skipping ahead a little bit, is that Malcolm is actually like 300 years old.
Yeah.
And
he's ancient, man.
He's ancient. And he and his brother or his cousin had captured this witch spirit entity in the woods, and I guess made it, like, they feed it to keep them alive. So if they bring victims to it, they get to stay, like, pretty much the same age, or like just I guess not the same age. I guess they were very slowly.
That's why it doesn't make sense. I mean, I guess they're aging slowly because they were children, maybe like early teens when the thing happened. Yeah. And now they're like, they're middle-aged men. So, yeah, it must be some just slowing down of the aging.
Right. But then it's like, so if you look at it through that lens of like, they're communicating in such a weird way because he is bringing Liz really to the slaughter. But also how do you communicate with someone when you're that fake? But two, maybe he also doesn't really understand like how humans work because he's so fucking ancient at this point. And it's like, well, if you're trying to have these conversations when you're from 1774, it's going to be a little different.
Yeah, that's true.
Again,
that's true.
It's these, I don't even know if I want to call them plot holes. It's parts of the story that just aren't fleshed out enough. And it shows that the script was probably rushed because, like you said, they were trying to do this in between the Long Legs and the Monkey, or they were during the Monkey production when it went on hiatus. They were like, well, let's fucking make another movie real quick and keep all these people working, which is admirable, but clearly there are some things lacking. So I go back and forth with it. I think the dialogue in the script overall sucks. I think that they're probably doing the best they can with what they have. But Sutherland, man, like, I don't know. I agree with the accent. Like, he is just, his delivery is so weird.
It is weird. It's
you
off-putting.
never know what emotion he's going for.
It's off-putting, and not in the way that people would think, like, oh, well, he's supposed to be awkward and weird and spooky-ish. But I'm like, no, he's not, because you're supposed to be, you don't want to know there's anything wrong with this guy before the reveal happens. So again, I caught that there was this something off with the guy. And of course, they get to the cabin. He shows that he's interested in her because he bought a painting from her and he's hanging it on the wall, and she's checking out this cabin for the first time. She takes a bath and she's hearing this sound up in the rafters in the ceiling and such. And then of course they have this dinner. It's supposed to be this romantic dinner. And the cousin, complete
Darren.
Fucking asshole, Darren, shows up with some European escort, Minka.
Yeah.
And she apparently doesn't speak any English, but we learned that she does actually. And there's this cake from the caretaker that's like sitting in this very foreboding and frightening looking like brown bag box thing. And, they go to have a conversation, the cousins, and, at that point, they're going to engage in conversation. Liz like says something to her and she says, tastes like shit when she's looking at the cake. Now, she doesn't want the cake. Clearly, Malcolm doesn't know that she doesn't like chocolate after being together for a year. Okay,
it's also a red flag that you don't like chocolate.
Shit boyfriend there. I don't like chocolate either. I don't like chocolate. I don't like chocolate cake either. So me and Liz are like, maybe we're kindred spirits on that, but
maybe she should have been with you instead.
She eats a slice, and then when she goes to bed, she's having these insane visions. I mean, the visions in this movie are so surreal. I loved all of the imagery there. Very terrifying stuff there. Then she gets up in the middle of the night, and this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. That cake is sitting on the table, and in the darkness, she just like has sex with the cake. Basically, She makes love to it the way she just eats it and just like shoves her face into it. That's imagine like
scene that you should have had in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, that's the sexiest scene in the fucking movie, if I ever saw one. I just loved how she devoured it. And then, of course, the next day, she's like out of her fucking mind. She's haunted by these visions of these screaming, bloodied women and a pregnant woman who looks almost identical to her. And the whole night, she's like completely disconnected. But he says the next day, which again, he's a piece of shit for this. I don't know who would stand up for this. He's like, sorry, there's this woman that had a stroke and she's in a coma. Since he's a doctor, I have to go take care of her, but I'll be back. I'm going to leave you in the middle of the woods in this place you've never been to before, all by yourself.
Yeah. He also like when she's eating the cake, you kind of see like different scenes where there's like severed fingers or something inside of the cake. But when he wakes up in the morning and he sees the empty box, he looks at her. And again, this is another thing that he does weird, where he almost looks like he's about to laugh, but he's supposed to be serious, where he's like, you ate the whole thing? How are you feeling? So there's something fucked up with the cake. And then, so she's acting all weird. And then Malcolm's like, hey, so, she was in a coma and she was supposed to come out of it, but she's not. And like her family is all around her. And like, I have to go. I guess I'll be back by like 6 tonight. Bye.
Yeah. Bye. And in between this time frame, that Minka chick is completely brutally killed, attacked by some force while walking alone in the woods while she's trying to call for an Uber. Like you'd ever be able to find an Uber out there. Poor girl.
I know. But I mean, and that scene was pretty good. I like that.
Yeah.
You're also getting some different through the visions that Liz is having. You could almost tell that like there's some timelines that aren't adding up that are supposed to kind of carry you through. Kind of like Black Coat's daughter, where things will add up in the end, but you're like, like how is this going to come back? And I really liked some of the stuff she sees in that house, like the baghead entity.
Dude,
I thought that was really good.
That fucking scene tore me up. It really was precisely timed. Once again, Perkins does everything we know he's good at in this movie extremely well. So what I'm faulting most of this is character work and screenplay, because we know what he can do with scares. We know what he can do with imagery and marrying the sounds of this, the sound production and the score to the imagery. He's perfect at that. Like there's no question. When it comes to the character stuff, that's where it falls, on the ground for me. The whole time, Liz is thinking like, dude, this guy's married, and she calls her friend
side piece.
Yeah, I'm a side piece. And her friend's a complete bitch about it, honestly. I felt bad for her about that. Not only is her boyfriend an asshole who doesn't know anything about her, he doesn't even know if she likes chocolate cake or not, but her friends is like, you're a side piece. You deserve better than this. Like basically like yelling at her about it.
Right. And then, I mean, I think one of the good scenes too is, while Malcolm's gone, and this kind of feeds into the more realistic fear, Darren comes back over and he's like knocking on the door, but he's saying stuff like, hey, I brought the drink, the celebratory drink, it's that time to have this drink.
Scotch, wasn't it?
Yeah, Scotch hitting you over the head with it. And then she's like, hello. And he's like, oh, I forgot your name, but you're still here. And then he's like, well, let me in. It's my family's house. And then they have kind of this tense back and forth exchange where you can tell that she feels like he is a threat. he's trying to understand why she's here without alluding to something should have happened to her.
Something should have happened already, right?
And then she ends up locking herself in the bathroom, which is the only door with a lock, supposedly. And then he ends up grabbing a meat cleaver and getting killed off screen.
Yeah. Really frightening scene, though. She peeks out the door, and you see him with the meat cleaver, and you realize later on, like, oh, dude, he's not trying to do anything to her. He's protecting himself in that scene because he knows that she hasn't been consumed yet by these things. So now he's on the chopping block, possibly.
Yep. And then Malcolm gets back, and you can also tell that Malcolm looks a little surprised, but his weird behavior plays it off in a better way than Darren's does. But then he fucks up, and he's like, hey, Liz, like, share a drink with me before we go home. Like, calm down. All the things that, you tell your partner when they're upset is, calm down.
Sure. Let's get hammered. Let's get hammered and lay on the floor together.
Things that always work. And then while they're laying kind of drunk on the floor, she asks how the patient was, and I forget the name. It's like Mrs. Kurt or something like that. And he's like, who? And she's like, and then there's silence, and he goes, oh, right, man, I'm such a cold-hearted doctor that I don't even know my patients' names. Ha ha ha. And then that's when she goes back and locks herself in the bathroom, and then he comes in there. And I thought this scene was good, where he's like, yeah, the bathroom doesn't actually lock. It's just there to make you
That was
feel
pretty
safe.
funny. I mean, this is the moment where this is something I really dislike in movies, that most of us film critics like to call exposition dumps, where now he's going to just recite all of the history about what the shit all is, that he's 300 years old and his kids, he and his cousin encountered this pregnant woman and she looks exactly like her, that, this witch woman, and they shot her before locking her in with some pigs. And, then she gave birth to strange fucking entities that have been appearing around these two since then.
And I do like, somebody called it like the Circus du Soleil, like creatures, because that's kind of what they were. There's like a long neck thing, the fucking white face thing.
The white face thing is nightmare fuel. I love that thing.
But it's like, all right, I didn't need this much backstory. It also still doesn't really make sense, because he tries to give it to the metaphor or the analogy of like, the fish gets caught and it's a magic fish and gives like 3 wishes. And it's like, so you guys got 1 wish where like you feed women to these things in a certain, like within a year, but like, I just didn't get it, because then also the other girl is pregnant. Like he has a family with that other girl. Like she picks up the picture, Liz does, of him and like the woman with 2 kids who are like toddler age.
And we see that he's been, all these girls from these visions are his previous relationships that he's using. We see this really chilling scene where he has boxes set up in this area in his house where it has things from all these different girls throughout the years that he basically lures in, gets them into a relationship, and then feeds them to these entities. And I think it would have been way more satisfying for me had they fleshed a lot of this stuff out a little bit better. Because at the end, when we get Liz in the basement and all these things encounter her, they kind of come together with her. Like she has this really sinister grin on her face, and she kind of becomes one with them, where they're not gonna eat or feed off of her at this point. They kind of
she also looks like the woman who gave birth to them.
The mother,
and they even say that they're like, we're your children. So you kind of get, the understanding that is not, it's not going to go the way that Malcolm wants it to. And I do like that scene where Malcolm kind of like gets her box together and puts it with all the other boxes. And that scene fucking scared me, where he's like, the one comes like screaming out, because it's at the beginning, the opening of the movie, I guess we have kind of overlooked. It's different scenes of like meeting a girl. Obviously, like it's supposed to be that scene where they first notice you and the attraction, and all of a sudden it's like it's building up to, there's the attractive phase, then there's the phase where you fall away and feel kind of weird, and then there's the the brutal ending to the relationships that Malcolm gets into. But he starts like naming them. He's like, hey, everybody say hi to Liz. And that first one that comes screaming out with like blood all over her, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And I do like that. I think that's good. And again, it's like, those are the moments that he really hits like near perfectly. It's just, there's not enough of those moments to fuse together well enough in this movie.
It's really frustrating for me because as we're sitting here, dissecting everything and kind of fleshing everything out, it really does make me realize how much of this movie I very much enjoyed. And I think that the movie has a lot going for it. So I can definitely relate to those that really enjoyed it. I mean, that scene we're talking about here in the climax where, these entities surround her and she's laughing and crying hysterically. And, we see this disembodied head that's preserved in a jar of honey. I mean, that shit alone is just like, that's my jam, dude. Like, that's everything about what I love for folk
that's your
horror.
honey and jam.
Exactly. But what's interesting about that though is he like just immediately starts to age after they surround her. So I'm like, is there a timeline here? Is there like a specific date and a time that he has to have this done by? We don't really get that information. So I'm like, okay, so how does he know what time and date he needs to do this by? I guess it's just like a tiny little plot point that they feel is unnecessary to the viewer, but
even though they make it very necessary for you to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I do like that, he ages and then he's attacked by the creature, the long neck creature. And then the next thing you get is old man Malcolm just like hanging upside down.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I do think was a beautiful shot, especially like Liz shows up and
her eyes are all black now, like the entities.
Black, yeah. And he's pleading and begging. He's like, I actually loved you the most out of all of these women. And she was like, no, you didn't. And then drowns him, kills him by drowning him.
Well, she makes him eat some of that. She makes him some of the eat of that fucking shitty cake first.
yeah, because it was just designed to knock him out.
Yeah.
So technically, she did something nice to him.
I guess so.
But yeah, I think that scene that lingers of him just like with his head in the jar of honey is great. I do love that.
It is great stuff. I mean, as we get to the end of the movie here in our discussion, like I said, there's so many cool things in the movie in terms of horror imagery, like the folk horror elements. I loved the setting. I loved the concept. I would dare say that if Perkins himself had written the script or had a major hand in it, it probably would have been much better. I mean, if you look at Nick Leppert, he's only written a few things, and Dangerous Animals, as of right now, was the most notable thing leading up to Keeper. He shows promise as a writer, absolutely. But like we said earlier on, Perkins has a way with character and writing characters in a unique way where they stand out among one another. And just look at Longlegs. Each character is so fucking specific. It's crazy. You know what I mean? You can't even, the little things that make them relate to one another, very few and far between, but those connections that they do have meld them together and it makes sense to the story. Where here, I didn't know anything about Liz other than that she was a painter in a relationship with this douchebag doctor who seemed like, I mean, did she have bad relationships before this?
Maybe Canadian? Maybe from the Bronx.
Who the fuck knows? I don't even know. But he's definitely not Kiefer, and he's definitely not his dad. I'm not shitting on his performance terribly, but he just wasn't. He didn't have any charisma. I know he's supposed to be like a lame doctor, but anyways, what made her
sound like his dad sometimes, not accent wise, but just like the gravelly kind of like Tony lower voice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think honestly, I just think he was miscast. I don't think he was right for the role. I think they needed someone else because Miss Lonnie is just so fucking awesome in this movie, and that's where I'm gonna get to the final thoughts on Trash It or Treasure It. B-Ratty, go ahead and give it to him.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the movie is a really good collection of scenes that work for me, but overall, it falls flat and it's too confusing, and I can overlook some plot holes. Like we just talked a few weeks ago about fucking Halloween 6. So that's not the issue here.
And you like that movie.
I fucking love that movie. I think that, we talk a lot about expectation versus reality with these movies, especially more of these like A24 neon films, elevated horror, if you will. And so I'm sure there is a little bit of that at play here where like I was expecting a certain caliber from Osgood Perkins. And maybe that's part of that's on me, but it didn't work. Like the parts that are good are not good enough to get past just the bad writing, I think is what it comes down to, because I think those were my issues with Gretel and Hansel too, is that the writing just wasn't there. Like Perkins can do all he can as a director. He can frame the camera how he wants. He can get the best cinematographers in there, put the music with it. But at the end of the day, if the script is shit, like, it's gonna show, and I think that is exactly what happened here. Not that Leopard's a bad writer. I think it all is just, it's a rush job. And I hate to say that because it was done under good pretenses, but God, this could have been so much fucking better if, like, maybe even if you made it a 2-hour long film, like, it's only 99 minutes, like, add 10 to 15 minutes more of exposition, which I know we always actually usually say the opposite. But it could have helped from that. Like, the scenes that you're getting of the women at the beginning who are all in the honeymoon phase, and then the awkward phase, and then the end phase, like, you didn't get any of that with Liz and Malcolm. You just got this weird awkward phase where neither one of them knows what's really how to interact with each other. And I'm sure some people can take that and say, hey, well, that's kind of like, who hasn't been in a relationship like that? And that's true, but I don't know that that's exactly what I thought this film was going for with those characters. Definitely go see it, go support it. If you like Osgood Perkins, there's going to be a ton to like in there, but it's just, I wish that maybe he had a chance to write it himself and make it his.
Yeah. So for me, it's 100%.
Oh, for me, it's a trash. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, very eloquently said. You put a lot of time and effort in relaying your thoughts, and very rightly so, man. I agree with a lot of things you said. It's a trash it for me. Very unfortunate, but it just didn't overall work as a film. As you said perfectly, as a collection of scenes, fine. A lot of those scenes are amazing on their own. I loved a lot of things about it, and I liked some of the other stuff, but it just was not a cohesive film for me that I felt from start to finish that everything really worked. And I do hold Perkins up to a certain level and regard because there is some expectation. I think I try to go into every single movie the same way and have little to no expectation as much as I possibly can. But when you have a filmmaker, you can name any filmmaker, Robert Eggers, Ari Aster, fill in the blank, any of these new modern, like auteurs, if you will. There is a certain expectation on what they'll deliver. And I even said it after the screening. Hitchcock had duds. Spielberg's had duds. I mean, yep. John Carpenter's had lots of duds. Wes Craven's had more duds than he's had good movies. I mean, so there's going to be some stepping stone movies where they're just not at the same caliber. And of course, the script and the story and what it's about makes a difference too. I mean, what kind of movie they're trying to make. But this could have been a home run. Everything was in place for this thing. I think it just needed more time to gestate, more time in the oven, as I said earlier. And we could have had another amazing Osgood Perkins movie, because everything that he had in his hands and everything that he did with those hands, he put it together, man. Like all the imagery, the sound, the score by Ado von Bremen, who did the score for The Monkey as well. Loved that score too. Great fucking music in this thing. And again, he has this certain way that he wants his characters to look and feel, and all of that is still present here. It's just, you can tell that he didn't write the script. The first thing I said when I walked out of the theater, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I saw it on the screen. He didn't write this shit, and it showed. Yep. So I'll still be excited for whatever he does next. I can't fucking wait. I'm still going to be in my theater seat every single time he makes a movie. But this one, unfortunately, keeper is not a keeper. So that's it. I had to throw it in there. I had to do it.
All right.
I got to be generic. I had to do it. But that's it, ladies and gentlemen, for our Fresh Fright review of Osgood Perkins' Keeper. If you've seen the movie, and I mean it when I say this, if you've seen the movie, comment on this post wherever you're seeing it, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Let us know what you thought of it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of different opinions on this one. If you're a first-time listener, thanks for checking us out. We really appreciate it. And if you're a long-term listener, thanks for sticking with us. Something we don't bring up enough, we haven't received one in a while. So if you like what you're hearing on Spotify, you can leave us a review just by leaving stars. You don't even have to write anything. And on Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts rather, that's what really helps us the most. We are a top 100 movie review podcast, but every single time you guys leave us a review, we do jump up the charts just a little bit more. So keep that in mind. We really appreciate you on that. And of course, at Epic Film Guys on social media, on every single platform known to man, we're available everywhere. So thanks again. I'm Justin.
I'm B-Ratty.
And as always, we like to ask you to keep that shit creepy.